Hello everyone. Welcome back to this series of tutorials for making some of the plots we're going to be doing in Excel. This week we're going to be working with our Lab 3 data, right? A continuation of this kind of population growth experiment that we've been doing for the last 2 weeks now, I guess. So, what we have this week is hopefully four new treatments that we collected during our lab sections, right? And then we're going to be generating a plot that compares those four treatment populations, the data from those four treatment populations, with the control data that we collected in our kind of first population growth lab, right? So hopefully the data we have kind of looks something like this, right? We have our four treatment populations here. This is kind of simulating a in this case I'm working with like food pulse data, let's say, right? This is what our raw data should look like. We should have 10 rows for each of these different treatments representing 10 different replicates, and you can see this is just raw count data that I'm working with right now. So we're going to walk through kind of the processes required to turn this into the plot that we're going to submit to Gradescope as part of our homework. So we're going to go through how to calculate the mean and the standard deviation again. This is going to be very, very similar to last week. And then I'm going to show you guys how to turn this into a very, very nice bar plot. A fairly simplistic process, which I hope you guys will be able to kind of follow along with. But yeah, let's get started. So the first thing we need to do is we need to calculate some summary statistics. I recommend that you guys have your summary statistics kind of set up in tables like this, where you have two rows representing your control and your food post treatments, and then four columns representing your combinations of age treatments and like baseline nutrient level treatments, right? And so in this case, we're working with 7-day low, 7-day high, 28-day low, and 28-day high nutrient treatments across our control populations and our food post populations. You can see that I have two tables set up here representing our mean and our standard deviation values that we're going to calculate. You'll see shortly that by setting up our tables in this way, this actually makes calculating these summary statistics very, very easy. So to get started with these means, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this kind of 7-day low food pulse mean cell, right? And then we're going to use that same formula that we used to calculate averages before. It's just equal sign and then average, right? You can see that it pops up there. We tab to complete, and now we're able to select the data series which we're calculating averages over. So we're going to select our 7-day food pulse low nutrient treatment, right? Close those brackets, and then there's our mean. So the neat thing about Excel is that if you set your data tables up in the right way, you can drag cells across these different kind of columns and then auto-populate the means for the corresponding columns in your kind of treatment data. So as an example of what this looks like, I'm going to select this cell and then drag it basically across the four different columns here representing our combinations of, again, age treatments and nutrient treatments, right? So you can see that that has given a new kind of average value for each of these different treatments, different populations, I should say. And if we select, you'll see that what it's basically done is it's shifted over one column to the right, the population series, data series that it's calculating the average from. And you can see that this is a consistent thing across these different columns in the mean data table, summary statistic table. So we start off with our A2 through A10, right? That we can see in this kind of formula section for the formula bar. We then move to B2 through B10, C2 through C10, and D2 through D10. So this is a very, very convenient means of calculating these summary statistics. It means that you only have to really enter in the formula once, and then you can just drag the fill across the rest of the table. We're going to do the same thing for our standard deviations. So again, this is the function we're using. It's stdev, and we're just going to do the same thing. We're going to highlight our data first for that first column, right? The 7-day low food pulse treatment. And then in this case, we're just going to drag across again, and you can see that it's done the same thing where it's now kind of incrementally moved across our raw data table and calculated the standard deviations for each of those corresponding columns. So this is now our means and our standard deviations calculated for our treatment populations. We can kind of go back to our spreadsheet from week 2, where we have the control data that we're going to be working with, right? In this case, remember, we're looking at 7-day low, 7-day high, 28-day low, and 28-day high populations. let's start off first by looking at our means and copying those over to our new data table. So we're going to select the means that we want, the mean cells that we want to select. Whenever you want to select multiple cells in Excel, the way to do this is to use to hold down the command button and then click on the cells you wish to kind of select and group together. So we have our first cell here, our 7-day low. We're going to hold down the command button, and then we're going to select our 7-day high, our 28-day low, and our 28-day high. We're going to copy all four of those cells. You can see that all four of these cells are highlighted and copied now. And then what we're going to do is we're first going to kind of paste them within this kind of within an empty cell, not within those tables just yet. Whenever we're kind of copying cells that are built off of like formulas that use internal functions, we want to make sure that we paste only the values and not the formulas themselves, right? And so to do this, what we want to do is we want to right click, go to paste special, and then there should be an option to paste just the values. We're going to select that option, and you can see that it's just given us those values, and it's no longer the formulas underlying those values that's being copied, right? So we have our control data for our 7-day low, our 7-day high, our 28-day low, and our 28-day high populations. What we're going to do now is we're going to transpose this data as we kind of paste it into our primary kind of mean summary statistic data tables. So you can see that I've selected those two first values and I've copied them. I'm then gonna right click on that cell, go to paste special again, and then you should see an option to transpose the cells. What that's gonna do is it's gonna transition these from being vertically oriented to now horizontally oriented, right? We're going to do the same thing for that second set of means right there. So right click, paste special, and then transpose. And you can see that we now have that mean data table nice and filled out and ready. We're going to delete those values since we no longer need them. And we're going to do the same thing with our standard deviation from that week 2 data, right? So again, select the first cell, hold down the command button, and then select the rest of the cells you wish to copy. We're going to copy all four of those cells, paste them first outside of the cells. And remember, we do want to use that paste special function. So we're going to go to paste special, and then we're going to select just the values, right? So once we've done that, we're going to select the first two cells, right? The first kind of column in that little small 2 by 2 table that we've created. And then we're going to go to our standard deviation data table, paste special again, and transpose this time to switch from vertical orientation to horizontal orientation. Same thing for that second column of data in that 2 by 2 table. And we did that incorrectly, sorry. And what we want to do is transpose. There we go. So now we have our data table is basically all set up and ready to calculate to turn into our plots, right? So the easiest way to kind of do this is to okay, I think there might be a slight issue in the way that I've set up these data tables here, but we're going to first kind of get rid of these column names since that might create some problems. And then we're going to select, first of all, our mean data table, right? All of the cells involved there. So the 8 means, as well as the column titles, as well as the row name titles as well. So the control, food post, 7-day low, 7-day high, 28-day low, 28-day high. We're then going to go back to our insert. Um, this time we're going to be creating a bar plot. So we're going to select column, and you should see this option for a 2D column, clustered, what they call a clustered column chart, right, or a bar chart. So we're going to select the clustered columns, and you can see that it's already basically formatted that data for us. So we have our 7-day low, 7-day high, 28-day low, and 28-day high populations, as well as two separate data series for our control and our food pulse treatment. So there's very little that we actually need to do. The only things are kind of aesthetic in nature, as well as adding those standard error bars, which I'll show you how to do in just a second. So first of all, let's give this a nice and informative title, right? We're going to call this um, effect of food posts treatments across age and nutrient treatments. Right? That's a nice informative title. It gives us our response variable. Um, sorry, make sure we do want to include that response variable. And it's probably okay for us to kind of leave that last part out since um, we're looking at a nice simple plot here, right? So very, very simplistic title, effective food post treatments on blepharisma population size. So that's our title set. Next thing we want to do is you probably want to have, you can see that this graph already comes with nice kind of x-axis labels, so there's probably not a whole lot we need to do there. But what we can add is a primary vertical kind of title, right? So we can change this to be population size, right? That's a nice accurate title for us. And potentially, we may also be able to add a primary horizontal title as well. Let's see. For this, we might want to call this like age and nutrient treatment, right? So that's a nice kind of horizontal primary axis title for us to use. The last thing we really need to worry about is adding those standard error bars. So just like last week, we're going to first select the data, right? In this case, make sure we're selecting one of the kind of data series that we're looking at, right? Either our control or our food post treatment. So we're going to start off with our control. We're going to add chart element, and we're going to add a series of standard deviation error bars on there. So what we can do is then, like last week, we're going to format these error bars, select the error bars first, format the error bars. We're going to give custom values and specify those values. And what we're going to want is basically our 7-day low through 28-day high for our control populations, right? So we're going to select those and highlight, press OK. Or before we do that, I should say, we're going to want to make sure we do the same for our negative error bar values as well. So highlight the corresponding columns in that standard deviation kind of data set. Then we're going to press OK. And you can see that we've now customized these standard deviation values, standard deviation bars for this plot. We're going to do the same thing for our second series, that food pulse treatment, right? Add these error bars on there. Select those error bars. Format the error bars. Select custom, specify value. And same thing as before, we're just going to select those columns involved, or the row involved, I should say. So it's going to be, again, the same values for our positive or our negative error bars. We're going to press OK, and then that has now customized the error bars for our plot. So this is now in kind of the structure or format, a condition that's ready for submission, basically. This is a very, very nicely structured plot that gives good representation of the data that we collected both this week and last week in terms of our control, and it displays those relationships well. So we have our nice kind of axis, primary axis titles, we have our axes labels, we have a informative kind of chart title as well. We have our legend, which tells us what each of these data series is representing. If we wish to modify the name of those legends, we're kind of able to do that by formatting the legend, I believe. Uh, second, see if we can find for you guys how to change the legend titles. It's actually select data. So here, what we're now able to do is modify these legend titles, right? So you can see that right now it is selecting this cell as the kind of name of the data series, right? Based off of how we first generated this plot, right? You'll remember that we included those cells right there, those row names when we were first generating the plot. Same thing for that kind of food pulse, right? It's referencing this F3 cell as what the title of that data series should be. So these are perfectly fine as is, and if you use the same kind of instructions to generate your plots, you shouldn't need to play around with your legend data series titles too much, hopefully. But if you do, this is how you're able to do that. So again, we're just selecting the control, selecting the legend itself. We're going to go to select data. And then in each of your data series, you have options to give the data series a unique name, right? So um, this name kind of data entry box is where you would put in what the name of your data series you want to be. Okay, that pretty much covers all we had to go through today. Hopefully you guys don't have too much trouble with generating these box plots or calculating summary statistics, things like that. But once again, if you do, feel free to reach out. I'm always more than happy to help out and answer emails and things like that to you guys, or come visit me in person in office hours. Always happy to help then as well. All right, hopefully you guys found this helpful. Thank you so much.